This week on Out of the Air features motion picture soundman turned filmmaker Jonathan Jackson discussing his documentary Living by the Lake. Next, photographer Michael Nowotny discusses his new book Stadiums of America. Our spotlight's on Indiana-based contemporary artist Tom Terlimke, whose unique freewheeling artistry is through his 40-year career, captured in his new book Live on Paper.
Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. You're in the know with Esther and Larry. Art on the air today. Stay in the know with Larry and Esther. Art on the air our way. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart.
Welcome. You're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, WVLP 103.1 FM, our weekly program covering the arts and arts events throughout Northwest Indiana and beyond. I'm Larry Breckner of New Perspectives Photography, right alongside here with Esther Golden of The Nest in Michigan City.
Aloha, everyone.
We're your hosts for Art on the Air. Art on the Air is supported by an Indiana Arts Commission Arts Project Grant, South Shore Arts, and the National Endowment for the Arts. Art on the Air is heard every Sunday at 7 p.m. on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, also streaming live at lakeshorepublicmedia.org, and is available on Lakeshore Public Media's website as a podcast. Also heard on Friday at 11 a.m. and Monday at 5 p.m. on WVLP 103.1 FM, streaming live at wvlp.org. Our spotlight interviews are also heard Wednesdays on Lakeshore Public Media. Information about Art on the Air is available at our website, breck.com/AOTA. That includes a complete show archive, spotlight interviews, plus our show is available on multiple podcast platforms, including NPR One. Please like us on Facebook, Art on the Air, WVLP, for information about upcoming shows and interviews. We'd like to welcome to Art on the Air Spotlight. He's been with us many times before. You can hear his previous interview, but we're going to focus on something he's got coming up. Tom Terlimke, and he is now releasing a whole new, brand new book. It's kind of an archive of his all his paintings, kind of his life's work, all wrapped up during the whole thing. So, Tom, welcome to Art on the Air Spotlight, and congratulations on your new book.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Larry. Thanks, Esther, for having me on again. It's so nice that you guys are such good supporters of the arts. Well, the book is actually a companion. It goes along with an exhibition at the Chicago Cultural Center, and it's Tom Terlimke Live on Paper. So it highlights like 40 years, like from 1987 or something like that, all the way to the present of all these various like works on paper that I've done over all these many years. I think with a special focus on watercolors. And the way this whole thing came about is like super important because I call it the miracle visit or the miracle show, because this curator, Dan Cameron, who is, if there was somebody that I would choose in the whole world to curate my show, it would have been Dan Cameron. So he, through recommendation by two other artist friends, he was encouraged to look at my work. And to make a long story short, eventually he came down to Northwest Indiana, came to the basement in the studio, and looked through almost everything I had. He was putting like paintings under his arm, 2-3 paintings at a time, flipping through piles. And then what happened was we had lunch. I thought he was only going to stay for an hour. He ended up staying for like 4 hours or something.
Wow.
And it was amazing. So we were just so fortunate. And then he said, "What's going on? How come people don't know about you?" And then I said, "I don't know. Linda and I have been working really hard." And he said, what do you got happening maybe? And then we said that we were trying to get a show at the Cultural Center. And he said, "Well, would you mind if I got behind that, if I curated your show at the Cultural Center?" And that was it. That was the day my life changed. He's just such an outstanding person.
So that conversation came before the book? So there was that conversation and then you put the book together? Is that what was the, so that's the catalyst?
So what happened was that once he said he wanted to curate the show, he had to contact the Cultural Center and stuff, and he like secured that deal right away. And then he's like, "We need to have a book to accompany the exhibit, you know?" So we're like, okay, and we're trying to figure out who's going to publish it, and we're thinking about it, and we didn't want it to be sort of a self-published book or anything like that. The Cultural Center, only has so much money in their budget. Things are tight nowadays. But what happened was Dan, coincidentally, was having lunch with the somebody from Skira Publishing, and the guy said to Dan, "Are you working on any projects? We'd love to work with you." And Dan said, "Yeah, I have a few projects." He said, "Why don't you pitch us some ideas?" And he submitted 4 ideas to this guy from Skira, and the guy chose me to do the book.
Wow.
So that's how the book came about. It was just happenstance, Dan's just ability to get things done.
You didn't really have a book in mind, but it was his Dan's prospect to kind of pushing that forward. And so, how does the exhibit relate to the book, or the book relate to the exhibit, or does the book actually go more into your background and work?
So it started out as maybe it was going to be like a catalog for the show, but then as time went on, Dan and Linda and I and other people were like, "I think this book needs to be very full." So they decided, Dan decided, Linda decided, and other people we've been talking to decided they were going to do a straight up monograph with a focus on works on paper, but almost all the paintings that are in the book are going to be in the show, unless for some reason when we hang the show we can't fit them all. So it's kind of like a catalog for the show, but it's more a straight up monograph with a biography. There's how many writers? There's 5 writers: Dan Cameron, Alan Picaro, Robin DeLuzin, Jeff Hubner, and David Detmer, who's local here. He teaches at Purdue. All of those people wrote tremendous feature pieces in the book to companion all of the art that goes in the book.
It looks gorgeous. Just
Thank
from
you.
looks like beautiful quality and big too. I think 160 pages.
Yeah, like again, a dream show, like miracle. Let's call it a miracle show and a miracle book to companion it. I would have never thought that would have happened ever, but I was very fortunate. And then to have so many
Congratulations.
friends, and my wife Linda, and everybody that helped do all of this. It's like and all the funders, everything was just unbelievable. Linda did all the fundraising.
Well, in our final moments here, tell us about the event real quickly.
It's Saturday, May 24th at the Chicago Cultural Center, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. That's the show. It opens at 1 and it lasts till 4 p.m., the opening. But just before that, this is a very special thing. At 12:15 in the theater that's in the Cultural Center, they're going to do a roast of me. So there's going to be 12 people. Tony Fitzpatrick is going to be the host of the roast, and they're going to really go at me, like make me feel much smaller. And then I really need that.
So Saturday, May 24th, 12:15, the roast, 1 to 4 is the opening, Chicago Cultural Center, and you can find out information at your website. Thank you much, Tom, for coming on Art in the Air Spotlight and sharing this wonderful journey with your book and opening.
Oh, completely. Congratulations so much, Tom.
Thank you so much for being who you are.
Art on the Air Spotlight and the complete 1-hour program on Lakeshore Public Media is brought to you by McCauley Real Estate in Valparaiso, Olga Patrician, Senior Broker.
This is Raina Duras, host of World Cafe, and you're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, and on WVLP, 103.1 FM.
We are happy to welcome Jonathan E. Jackson to Art on the Air. Jonathan has been a film technician for over 20 years, doing sound for documentary and narrative fiction. Living by the Lake is his first film, charting the seasonal changes of the massive erosion in Beverly Shores, Indiana from Lake Michigan. Living by the Lake was selected into the Outer Banks Environmental Film Festival in 2024. Thank you for joining us on Art on the Air. Aloha and welcome, Jonathan. It's very nice meeting you.
Hi.
Well, Jonathan, we always like to start, and of course, we like to tell our audience, which they know, that we're both very close to Beverly Shores, where this film was made. I live just a few miles south there, but anyway, it's an interesting project. But we first want to know more about you. I call it your origin story. So tell us about how you got from where you were to where you are now.
Well, I originally from England, and I full-time moved to the USA in New York City in 2001. Before that, I'd just grown up in England and in a small town, England, very nice area, just having fun as a kid. Moved to London and wanted to, try and make some music and do all that business. And then I did a road trip around America in the mid to late 90s. Which was an interesting time, and I ended up in Chicago actually, which is and I spent about 3 months there. This was in the 1998. I think Nirvana were pretty big, and I met somebody, and they took me into a recording studio, and I think that's where I kind of had my eureka moment, and things started to make sense, and I was like, well, now I know what I want to do, which was, if I remember rightly, I think the studio was called King Size. They had King Size and Queen Size. That's what I remember. It was probably some indie rock. I mean, that's kind of what Chicago's known for, and house music, of course.
So, what drew you to us the sound? You kind of fell in that. Did you have any as a youth interest in sound production, or is this kind of just sucked into it?
Yeah, just kind of, I think a lot of cassette tapes and a lot of vinyl and stuff like that, really. Just, organically doing that, recording things and messing around. Then eventually I went to school for sound engineering. I was like, oh, and now I'm cutting and splicing tape. This is this is easy. I get it, so it was all cool.
I bet you enjoy audio editing nowadays. Having run a recording studio in the 70s into the 80s, a small one, a little 4-tracker, I am all with you about the splicing. Of course, so what I a lot of times want to do is what they call punch-in editing, where you punch it into another machine. Of course, you lose a generation of audio sometimes that way. But yeah, I know what you mean. I've spent many times doing splicing.
Yeah, it was. I just caught the end of the analog era, I think, in the consumer world, right? And then so I kind of just learned it, really. I didn't really do it that much. Then it was all DAT tapes after that, and CDs and
right,
all that good stuff. And so that's really, the coming to America was quite a life-changing experience. And because my wife, I met my now wife, and she's from Chicago. I stayed here for about 3 months. I don't know what her parents thought at the time, but that's what was going on. And they were kind of cool, quite cool Chicagoans, and went with it, and were very nice. And they had this place out on Lake Michigan in the Indiana Dunes.
Ah.
So that's actually, it was good that we talked about that, because that was the kind of connection there. I would never have ended up anywhere near Beverly Shores if it wasn't for my wife, and her parents, of course, had a kind of place out there. And I think they would just come out in the summer and stuff like that. And then I think eventually they bought a place. I don't really know the history of it, to be honest, but we would stay there. We would stay at their house, and just the natural beauty of the Indiana Dunes is kind of immense, even just between driving from the lake shore to Route 12, right? I mean, you're going from a coastal shoreline area through woods, then into tidal marshes. I mean, it's quite phenomenal. So it's always a pleasure to go there, and also went there during the winter. So it had that, it wasn't like I was just there for the good times. And my kids kind of grew up there. We'd take them for the summer and the winter. We'd spend Christmases there. It was, so it's quite quite an important place for our family.
So now that explains, because when I read that as soon as you saw what happened with the massive erosion that we had, that you picked up your camera and just drove cross country to be here. And now I understand the connection.
Yeah, I mean, I can, yeah, that's pretty much it. We would go to the dunes like the whole of August. My wife would spend most of August there. Depending on my work schedule, I could join her whenever. But and then in the winter we'd come. So yeah, we had and that was for Christmas. So yeah, just a huge connection. And obviously my wife had a connection with it going back to her parents, and they have a dune house, there, and it's right on the lakefront. I'm not going to lie, it's absolutely beautiful. It's not too modern. It's just a ranch style thing, but you see the lake every day and you feel very connected.
Yeah, it's very magical.
And there was a beautiful beach. So let me see, I got to America in 2001. We got married in 2002. Had my first child 2002. So I think around 2000, I was trying to do the math because my kids are now 20 and 18. And so I think around 2012, I just remember the beach. I made a video of the kids, and they came up from the beach. They walked up this wooden steps, and then walked up the first dune, and there you are. So that was a wonderful thing. And I did a little video of them. And as you rightly say, it was during COVID, and I saw the drone footage of the devastation of the beach, the shoreline, the infrastructure. It was scary. And I was like, I was always being told, someone told me, if you ever make a film, it has to be, make it personal, and, just film anything, but it's personal. And so I was like, okay, maybe this is what I should be doing. And I was going to take my own little camera, and I thought, you know what? Might as well just take a bigger camera and learn how to use it. And do some interviews with some of the people I already knew there, So I already had an in to not only the issue being quite environmentally conscious, but also I knew some of the people. So it all kind of, and then there's this awful thing that happened. You've got to have something to focus on. So I got there because the road had fallen in, and most of the town is very small, and it only relies on one road, and that had fallen in, or the car park had fallen in at the state park. And it was, when you see the drone footage, you can see how the lake has literally just eaten away at it. It's like it's taken big bites of the coastline, and it's just, it was feet away from the road, all the way along the road.
Right.
So it had fallen in at one part, but the lake had been slowly over months and months as it was rising. So not only was it these high record lake levels, but also the storms were particularly intense. So it really accumulated, and the road fell in. And and when I saw the drone footage of the devastated shoreline, I just didn't think too much about it, to be honest.
Yeah, that was from Timeless, I think, aerial photography that you saw that. Did you use any of their drone footage in your film?
Yeah. It opens with that drone footage. I'm not a big lover of drone footage. I think it's spectacular. There's no way of telling the story of the devastation when you had that drone footage. I mean, it was the only thing you could do. You could ask somebody to tell the story of their personal, experience of this. They had a 24-hour storm. The lake levels were as high as they've ever been. They've already had a lot of almost like sandbags they've put on these. I think the state government had put all these sandbags along the beach. I mean, this was kind of like an emergency kind of crisis moment. And unfortunately, I think it was the state or federal government, I'm not sure who it was, but that kind of just got washed away. That was like nothing. And the road collapsed, but it wasn't a big surprise to a lot of the residents of Beverly Shores. And so, yeah, the drone footage really told that story well. I mixed it in with a news report, actually, that I just recorded from someone's phone. Because, I kind of liked just keeping everything. Like, I didn't want to go into stock footage, and it's not a historical documentary. It was a film about the moment and how these people responded to it. And it was a little bit of a them and us thing, because they didn't get any help from the state, because the state had to declare a state of emergency, and they didn't do that. I don't think FEMA were interested in helping. So they were very isolated, and, so that builds a them and us situation, and they were really on their own. So they had to make a bond, and they had to fix it by themselves, and they had to put this incredibly huge seawall in as a last resort.
Right.
Because when you're at that moment, you don't know if it's going to get better. You expect I think they'd been expecting the lake to kind of subside for 3 years, and it wasn't. So, the drone footage really just told that story in a quick way. So, and it was very nice. I called them and they said they can use it. Just make sure you put our name on it. So that was fine.
Right.
Very generous of them, actually.
So this is your first film, and you actually shot the footage, apparently. And we'll go back and talk about some of your work in film and television. But obviously, you told us your motivation for doing it. But tell us the process. You went out and shot all this film, and you got all this raw footage. How did you then decide to edit it and put it together? Did you do the editing? Tell us all about the rest of the production process.
Well, when I filmed it, the crisis starting point was the storm and the damage to the beach and the infrastructure and the devastation. And the end point was a year later. I kind of just gave myself a year to film it, because once you've been to the dunes and you've spent a bit of time there, you realize the beauty and the ecological history of the place and the geology and all this stuff with the lake. I mean, it's quite phenomenal. And so I thought, it'd be nice to see it in the winter, because it's very different, right? And obviously the temperatures get a lot colder, and it's kind of quite hostile, actually.
Right.
But it's life affirming as well, right? And so I wanted to at least be that, and then filming it by myself, I had an easy schedule, right? I just had to kind of figure it out. And when you start a film, because I have a bit of experience in this, I know there's a lot of work done before filming. I know you wanted me to talk about the editing, but
right.
It's all a process, right? I mean, so I kind of went into it not completely blind, because I met Carol Rusick, who was the kind of the main focus of the film. Number one, because she had photographed all the previous times this had happened, and also lived through it. She moved to the dunes, the Indiana Dunes in Beverly Shores in 1951. They built a house right on the lakefront. And she said that was the first time she had experienced this incredible rise of the lake's waters. And they were putting sandbags around their house as well. And it was not a big community back then. And we're talking the early 1950s. So I met her, and she had this whole wealth of photographs. So immediately I thought, oh, this is amazing. Now I have a person to focus the issue on, right? Which is kind of what you're looking at when you make a short documentary, is have a human subject too. And she was just fantastic. Although she was 92, she was amazing. I mean, unbelievable. And so I had that connection between the environmental issues, the town, who are kind of on their own, kind of having to deal with this devastation of their beach and their livelihood in a way. And then Carol, who had this completely different perspective, and the film kind of ends with, well, this is nothing new.
Right.
I've seen this 3 times now. So it was incredible. And but so I thought, oh, the film's going to be so easy, 20 minutes. But of course, the more I filmed, the more I got into it. And I ended up with so much footage. The editing took way too long because I kind of veered away from that general kind of idea of Carol and her photographs, and then the problems of the erosion and the road falling in the present day, right? So you had that nice contrast between the historical and the present day. I thought this is going to be a great film, but of course I filmed way too much, and I think the first edit was like 45 minutes long.
Right.
From a 20-minute film, that was the idea. So.
Now, the project got renamed. It was first called the Erosion Project, and then at some point you decided to rename it. Why did that happen, or you thought that was a much more marketable name?
Well, yeah, then because when you make a film, you want people to see it. So that is kind of the general idea.
The goal.
That is the goal. I first did Living by the Lake came very late, actually, when I started submitting to film festivals. So we got into 4 really. I was very proud. I mean, I'm proud of everything this film does, and like for it to be shown on Lakeshore Public Media is no joke. Is probably the top of the mountain, I think, for this film. So I'm so happy that people are going to get the chance to see stuff about their own region like this. And it's not really for anyone else.
True, but I mean, I think people can appreciate, especially the human interest part that you've put into the story. I think that's definitely interesting. And as you said, with any kind of documentary or something like that, you can't sometimes focus on the big. You have to focus on something singular.
Yeah,
and it's actually relevant to anybody
relatable.
who lives in a lakeshore community. I mean,
Absolutely. I thought about that, especially with climate change and all that, with one of the factors is rising water, right? And communities are having to adapt to that. This is an interesting story because it's this, but it's not directly related. In fact, it's not related to climate change, but it's the same problem and it still has the same
well, and also I think the word lake is sort of disarming. You think of a placid lake, but Lake Michigan is like the ocean. It comes in brutal
it does.
during the winter, or it just it's not a placid little lake. It's constantly in motion.
I mean, part of that was like I'm not a great photographer, but trying to capture that lake is almost impossible.
Right.
I mean, because it can be like it can be like an ocean, and then it can be like
a
glass.
Lake. Yeah,
it can literally be glass, and that horizon is just the faintest line, and it's it's quite phenomenal. So I did want to kind of to keep that natural nature kind of vibe, right? This is a place, it's not just an issue, and the environmental pressures on that place are kind of part of what makes it so special. I mean, right? So it gets the brunt of the water, it gets the brunt of the storms, gets the brunt of the wave action, but it's also what brings all the sand down, and it created the sand dunes in the first place, because it's right at the bottom of the lake. And, so...
Right. It's natural, and the road is like everything else is unnatural, really. So it's a constant struggle between those two elements, and the lake is just doing what the lake does.
Exactly.
In our last couple of minutes here, do you have another film project maybe down the road, or is this something that's just kind of a one-off because it's just so special to you personally?
I do have about 3 projects I'm writing out. Because number one, don't want to do them alone. Making a film is probably one of the hardest things you can do, because not only is it very technical in your shooting, but first, then before that, you have to produce it and organize it. So it is really difficult to do alone. I would say anyone thinking about doing their own film is find at least a partner, even if it's a family member, but someone who can just kind of help out. And so, yes, I've written a bunch out. One's called Wolves of Chernobyl. It's about a bunch of wolves that live around the old nuclear reactor that supposedly are getting resistant to cancer. And one about offshore wind in New York. And then one about, well, I won't talk about the other one.
Okay. And we really didn't touch on your career, but as a sound man, either sound and I guess you're a well sought after boom operator, but maybe we'll do that another time. We're in our final minute here, and we want to give you a chance to tell us, our audience, about when they can see this on Lakeshore Public Media and everything like that.
Well, this film is all about the Indiana Dunes and the people that live there, and that during 2020, the lake was an all-time high, and it created absolute chaos for the residents of Beverly Shores. So it's the film that covers how they dealt with that, but it also digs in a little bit of the history through a long-time resident who photographed all the previous times this had happened. So it's called Living by the Lake. It's about the residents of Beverly Shores, also highlights longtime resident and a national park ranger who gives us a little tour of the dunes. So it kind of has that element in it too. And then it kind of wraps it up with all the cycles of the lake. That's kind of the idea of the film, that it's all to do with these generational cycles that the lake goes through that we don't always appreciate.
Well, we appreciate you coming on Out of the Air. It's Jonathan Jackson. He's the filmmaker. It will premiere on Lakeshore Public Media, 8:30 p.m. on May 23rd. You can see it there and view this as something for Northwest Indiana residents that's really right at home. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for coming on Out of the Air and sharing the whole journey about creating your documentary.
Thank you very much. It's so great to talk to you, and a pleasure to show this film to the residents of Northwest Indiana and Chicago.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Hi, this is Alan Harrison, author of Scene Change and Scene Change 2. You're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Media 89.1 FM and on WVLP 103.1 FM. Enjoy and go to the arts.
We would like to welcome Michael A. Nowotny to Art on the Air. Michael is a photographer with his first book of photos out called Stadiums of America. It features images of football, baseball, and of college stadiums across the United States. He has been taking photos for around 50 years. He is a veteran of the United States Air Force and formerly with the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Department. Thank you for joining us on Art on the Air. Aloha and welcome, Michael. It's very nice meeting you.
Thanks, Esther.
Well, Michael, how we always want to start off our shows is we always like to get to know our guests. I had the privilege of meeting you at the last Art Barn juried exhibit, and we got to chatting, and I thought, well, this is a perfect guest for our show to talk about your background, both in the arts and photography, but also some of the other things that you did in your life. And I always like to tee it up by, is your origin story, how you got from where you were to where you are now. So tell us all about Michael.
Okay, well, like I said, I would have to say I was at 17. I'll tell this story. 17 years old, and I was sitting there reading the newspaper the day after graduation, and my mother came into the room and said, "You better get off your ass and all, whatever, and find a job." I stood up, I saluted her, and I went and joined the United States Air Force. And to this day and time, I always thank my mother. She says, "I never did that, because my mom's still alive." And she goes, "I never did that." I said, "Yes, you did, Mom." And I have to say that basically was the start of my life. And and then, I remember when I was in the Air Force, I was under presidential support for Richard Nixon. And I did get interested in photography then. And I go to the photography club meetings and stuff like that on base. But that's basically how I started.
What was home life like and schooling like? I mean, was there any art done in the family, music?
To tell you the truth, I did play clarinet, and exactly, home life was okay. I mean, it was basic family stuff, and I still, appreciate, love my parents very much. My dad's been passed for 10 years now, and my mom's still hanging out at 92 years old. She'll be 92 next month.
Yay.
And, yeah, and in our family life, I did I did take a like to art in like high school, but like I said, I started out with saxet, and then I moved up to clarinet, and then of course after I moved out of the house, went to join the United States Air Force, I I kind of gave up the musical stuff, but the like I said, Esther, the photography has always been in my mind, and I've been doing it ever since,
So
and
were
my
you
sister.
doing it while you were in the Air Force, I hope, or I mean,
No, what I did is I went to their photography clubs and that, so that's where I kind of got started on it. So the real part that I got started was I went to a friend's house of mine, and in his basement he built a dark room, and I would go over there, almost every day, and I was very much hooked on the photography stuff, and we'd make pictures. My first sales, I guess, were the rock group Chicago, because I
yeah.
had pictures of them, and then I actually put an ad in the local paper and stuff like that, and people were actually buying it and stuff, and yeah, that was home life, and yeah, it was fun. Like I said, my friend Paul Heileman, I still know him today. In fact, I did a practice with him the other day about this type of stuff, and
Uh-huh.
yeah, he was very good with movies, and but I got interested in the photography aspect, and I did do a lot of black and white then, shooting Kodachrome and things like that.
There's a lot of my friends who were in the military, who were artists, whether by profession or enjoyment.
Hmm.
I know a friend in Vietnam would do sketches of what was
Right.
happening, and
Wow.
yeah, so
So I'm
it was
curious about your service in the Air Force. You touched on it just briefly, so tell us a little bit about your career in the Air Force. And I always like to say thank you for your service because I think that's very important.
And you're welcome. But yeah, Larry, so my service time was about 3 years, because I went in 1971. And like I said, my mom, I always thought, kicked me out of the house. But no, I went into service in the United States Air Force, and I ended up at Homestead Air Force Base, Florida. And yeah, like I said, I was on, in security police, which, went on to my life as a sheriff's deputy. But yeah, I was in security police, and assigned presidential support for Richard Nixon, which I thought was kind of cool. And well, my brother, I don't know why I'm saying this, but he spent 23 years in the United States Air Force, and parts of it was a flight engineer aboard Air Force Two. And that was kind of cool, because he said, he met a lot of people and was friends with Hillary Clinton and all sorts of stuff. But my military career is, basically in Homestead Air Force Base. I was going to be sent to Mildenhall, England, but that was canceled because they were doing the background so I could get in the presidential support. And yeah, and that was my military career.
And so after the military, how long was it before you became and I don't know if in Wisconsin they call it sheriff's deputy or sheriff's police.
Right, sheriff's deputy. Well, anyhow, I stayed in Florida for a little bit, and I was, writing tests for like Dade County Public Safety and Miami Beach and all that. And then finally, I had kind of a bad thing happen to me where my car was stolen, one of my cars. I had a Mini Cooper that I used to race down there, and but no, it was my Camaro that got stolen. And then I came back to Milwaukee, through jobs. But my main goal actually was to be in law enforcement. I mean, I attended Milwaukee Area Technical College and got a degree in associate's degree in police science, and that was kind of my goal, I guess. What I wanted to do for life. And then I got onto the sheriff's department after working at a few other jobs around town, and that was my career. And I ended up in the witness protection unit.
Wow. Excellent. Great story. So did your photography ever intersect with your work in the sheriff's department? Did you do some work?
I did do photography for them, like action scene and some stuff. And I retired as a detective, and like I said, in the witness protection unit. And that career too was a very good thing. I mean, I've been retired now 24, 25 years. I retired in 2003. And yeah,
So I have a photography question. So
okay.
I love the way you see and frame a picture. Are you doing that in the camera, or are you doing that after it's taken mostly?
Okay, Esther. I basically think like today, there's three types of photography. There's your digital, you know, basic photography. Then there's art photography, as I like to call it. And then there's just cell phone photography, right? And that makes everybody a photographer. But like you're saying, one of my quotes, as I see it, I don't do much enhancing. I might do contrast, cropping and stuff like that. But there's a phrase out there. It's not what I see, but how I see it.
Exactly.
And that's what I do as far as my editing and stuff like that. I use Lightroom a lot.
That's
Yeah,
what I was admiring about your photography was the way you saw it, I guess. There's a particular photo on your Instagram that is of it's an Asian scene, and it's just framed so
right.
exquisitely,
Hmm.
it's just
Well, that
so
one,
beautiful, everything about it.
and that was the lady, right, where she had her legs spread,
Yeah,
arms spread
yeah.
apart, and that one I took. I don't know when I took it. It was called a thing called China Lights here in Milwaukee. And that photograph, as it is, I mean, I've been entering it in juried shows, and it's been accepted. And one of them was in Wichita, Kansas, at a place called the Midwest Center for Photography, where the whole thing, the title of the show was red.
Oh,
And,
wow.
and I'm looking at that. No, I looked at that picture and I said, "Dang, I got to put that in there." And that's yeah. But like you said, Esther, I will see something and yeah, it's how I see it and what I do with it. I mean, like my book, okay, Stadiums of America, and I'll do a shameless promotion, which can be found on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and Walmart. And anyhow, but when I was doing that book, okay, and like you said, like you guys said, it's my first book I ever did in my life as far as a photo book, right? And I was just kind of intrigued by that. I'll throw this little story in there. My brother was talking to me one night on the phone. He lives out in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And he says, you got nothing better to do. Why don't you go around the country taking pictures of stadiums? So we started formulating that, and I found a publisher, Barnes and Noble, Book Writing Lane out in San Francisco. But anyhow, the main object of the book, and you guys probably looked at it. Did you have a copy of my book, Larry?
No, I mean, I looked at what you have online, but I didn't see, the actual
Oh,
book.
okay. Well, anyhow, when I did the book, and this was a concern of mine, I just took photographs of the outside of stadiums. No people, no going inside, and all that sort of stuff. And my attorney, I asked about copyright and everything, and he says, "You're not going to have any problem, I don't think." Well, attorneys, I don't think, but anyhow, he told me, he says, "I don't think you're going to have a problem with it because that's what people see every day that they're walking by a stadium." And well, you probably saw the cover of my stadium, right? The book. And yeah, and then I started on the adventure on that and put it together. I put 7,511 miles on my car
Wow.
going around the United States, well, some of it, I mean, like University of Maine. My daughter lives out in Maine, so she took me up there. But I went to Miami and stuff like that. And that was really the adventure, just going around into these different places and stadiums and taking pictures. I didn't take pictures of all the stadiums in the United States. Like New York, I didn't go to, and never go out to Boston. Because you drive through the Boston city, and I have to say it this way, I never used the F word so much in my life with the traffic. Oh, boy, was that a pain in the butt. But yeah, and that's how I put together the book like that. Like I said, my publishers, they were real decent with me. But that's how I see stuff. It's just how I see it. And another thing I do, and you probably know that, Larry, with the card I gave you, is I'm involved with the fast car photos.
Right.
And that was started by a friend of mine, Kurt Roussel. And he lives in New Smyrna Beach, Florida now. And it's basically, and I'm kind of a contributing photographer with that. But that the other thing that's kind of a passion is race car photography. Besides fine art, I love going to the racetracks. I've shot at Indianapolis. Well, I work at Indianapolis, and anyhow, I shot at Indianapolis, but I've shot at Mid Ohio Sports Track Course, and just going at, and that is kind of what I'm looking at. If I do another book now, is going to be on the speedways, abandoned and closed speedways
Oh.
around the area. And I've been to a few places so far, like Meadowdale down in Carpentersville, Illinois. And what it's going to be is just, it's probably going to be in black and white and just showing, the tracks as they exist today closed down.
Right. I know that we have a couple local tracks that are closed down. One was called the Ileana Speedway, and then another one was a drag strip called US 30 Drag Strip, and that was things in
Okay.
Northwest Indiana that they're both actually. Well, the Speedway is there. I think they're going to develop that. It's still in existence, but the drag strip's been gone for a long time. But
Wow.
yeah, that sounds like a great project to do, and you already have an existing set of photos that you can start that project with. I mean, you're looking at just
Right.
your website and everything. You're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, on WVLP, 103.1 FM. Well, a lot of photographers listen to our show, so tell us a little bit about your equipment.
Okay, my equipment, I'm a Canon guy. Okay, Nikon. I have a little problem with those people. No, I don't. But what do you shoot, Larry?
I shoot Canon because the line I always tease about is friends don't let friends shoot with Nikon. But
Okay, good one. Good one. I like that. But yeah, I got two Canon 90Ds, and that's what I shoot with right now. I mean, I started with Canon with like the FTB or whatever it was
Right.
back when I was doing film and that. And then as far as lenses and that, I got a 150 to 600, and that's really good at the racetracks and stuff like that. And then my regular one, I just put a 18 to 400 on that, and that's kind of my general
Right.
stuff. And I did do, back in the day, I did do wedding photography, which is whatever. But yeah, 'cause I did work for a studio here in town, Ed Heinz Studios, and he'd send me on the weekend, and I did a lot of weddings by myself.
Yeah, those are always fun. You never know because if it's all on you, and then all of a sudden it's like your data card or whatever it is, like something failed. It's like, oh my gosh, the wedding's gone.
Right, exactly. Well, I wouldn't do that. But I always like going to the weddings, and the one that always cracked me up was when the drunk guy showed up, and he latched on to you. Like, hey, you should do this or that. But yeah, I did wedding photography. I've done it all. I've done portrait work, and when it comes to photography, I think I'm well versed and covered in all the stages of that, right?
Yeah.
And then, like I said, racing photography, I just find that kind of cool.
Well, yeah, especially also you've branched off into like retired racetracks, which
Well,
will be, I
yeah.
just can't wait to see the images of those. That would be,
That's coming up. I'm still working
Yeah.
on that project. But yeah, Esther, and then I'm going to say this, through the racing, like I said, I've been working 37 years as a yellow shirt at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and it's glorified. But the people that I've met during the racing things, and they've actually become my friends, which I think is kind of cool. Like, I'll throw this one out at you. Willie T. Ribbs, do you know who he is? You do?
yeah.
The first African American to race
Right,
in the
yeah.
Indianapolis 500?
Yeah.
Well, anyhow, he's a pal of mine because I met him. I'll throw this story out there. He's a pal of mine because I was at Indianapolis the year after COVID, and a lot of stuff wasn't going on. And I run around, my buddy goes, "Hey, look, it's Willie T. Ribbs." So I walked around into where he's signing autographs. I sat there BSing with the guy for an hour and a half.
Wow.
And then the thing, I'll throw this out too. I said, "Hey, Willie," I said, "I know you're going to be racing in this SRX series, and it's kind of an all-star thing." And I said, "How can I get media passes for Slinger Speedway here in Wisconsin?" And he says, "Text me in a week and I'll let you know." And I text Willie back, and he says, "Mike," he says, "notify XRX that you're going to be my guest for the evening." And so I went up there, and then, I'm Willie T. Rib's guest. The lady goes, yes, you are. And you go in, and I got to meet like all the drivers there and that, and do my photography stuff.
That's great. Is there a project or a subject that you haven't done that you would like to do?
That's a good question. Now, I'm not a big, as you probably realize, Larry, I'm not a big people person, okay? I mean, I am a people person, but I don't do a lot of, like portraits and stuff like that unless requested. And the project, I'd have to say, I don't know.
Oh, okay. I was thinking like with motor cars, a lot of times you might move on to trains and or aircraft, or it's kind of like that seems like a natural extension of the motor car series.
Well, I do take pictures like the Thunderbirds or the Blue Angels when they're in town and stuff like that. And that's fun now. I'm just going to tell you. But yeah, as far as projects go, it's as they come.
And so you got the book. Is there and are you going to think about the subject matter to make another book, or are you going to make a general book
No, like I said, the next book is going to be, if I do another book, right? Because this is my first book and whatever. And then anyhow, but if I do the next book, it's going to be called Abandoned Racetracks.
Okay.
Abandoned racetracks, yeah.
Abandoned or lost race or discontinued, whatever. And that's going to be how the project's going to work. It's going to be basically of those tracks, like the ones you mentioned, Larry, and a few other ones. And yeah.
Very good. Now, I've noticed on your website how you render it in different materials. I know most of my work I render on canvas, actually canvas gallery wraps. But what are some of the ways you render your work? You do canvas, but you also do metal, or what are some of the things?
I'm basically print photography, right? And when I enter the juried shows, in which I've been moderately successful around the United States in those, I just do about a 16 by 24 print on luster paper or whatever.
Right.
No, then that's my thing.
Yeah, I like luster. I like luster because it's kind of that glossy. Sometimes I don't know. There's a little bit too much, and yet it's better than like a total flat. It gives you that look. And so like I said, I have rendered stuff on that, and also like I said, most of the stuff I do in galleries, I have been doing either canvas or I've been doing some metal. There's some There's some images, especially certain black and white or some certain color images that just pop when you put them on metal.
But like you're saying, Larry, when I look at my images, I kind of think, if I'm going to put it on a matte paper, what some of them are conducive to. Like when I do black and white, I think a lot of it's on the matte paper.
Right.
And luster paper is, my secondary. And, I just kind of I think that just enhances it.
Now, we've talked about your equipment and kind of like how you've rendered things. With the thing on your website here, I noticed like there's a whole range of things like wall art, home decor, lifestyle things. How does that process work? You have things like pillows and things like that, handbags or bags. How's that set up? How do you do that process?
That's only by request. I mean, if somebody requests whatever. And like I said, my main thing is, 16 by 24 inch printed, framed, matted, and that's what I do.
Completely off the beaten path. Do you also do other types of art? Do you paint or do ceramics or nope?
No,
It's
ma'am.
just strictly photography.
Unfortunately, I'm strictly a photographer.
Yeah, no, that's
and
wonderful.
and I'm happy with that. I mean, my sister, God bless her soul, she passed away a couple of years ago, but she was a paint artist. And when I entered, just getting into that, Esther, when I entered the juried shows, the ones that I really appreciate is like the Art Barn, where it's a multimedia type show. Because, your stuff is up against, sculpturing and painting and all that. I just like that. But unfortunately, I'm just a photographer.
That's okay.
Is it?
It sure is. Now, you have some sort of like exhibit coming up. Is it the end of May, or as far as you know, where's that going to be at?
It's going to be at Whitewater University right here in Wisconsin, Whitewater, Wisconsin, at the Whitewater Arts Council. And it's called the Fran Archin Photography Show. And Fran Archin was you can look it up, but he was a photographer.
Right.
Let me throw this out, Larry. I'm also a member of the Colorado Photographic Arts Center in Denver, Colorado. and I've been in their shows. Another place that I could go is the Grosse Pointe Museum, or the Grosse Pointe Artists Association in Grosse Pointe, Michigan. That's
Was it
another place.
Colorado because of the Air Force?
No, it's just
Is
because
that-
it's Colorado. And my brother lives in Wyoming, the Cheyenne, so.
Well, in our last few moments here, can you tell people how they can find you online to see your artwork and where your books are available again, once again?
Okay, my books are available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Walmart. And then as far as artwork, if you want to get it, I am on Fine Art America. And then the other thing is just contact me on my email address, mrSpeedway@att.net.
Okay, we appreciate that. I'm sure if they do a search on your name, they'd find it. And that's Michael A. Nowotny. He's a photographer, recently seen at the, in fact, actually his work is still at the Art Barn for at least this month of May. And a part of that, and you can find his book in those multiple locations. Michael, thank you so much. It was a pleasure meeting you at the Art Barn and coming on the show.
Well, thank you very much. And I hope we go forward with this.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No, you too, Esther. Thank you.
We'd like to thank our guest this week on Art on the Air, our weekly program covering the arts and arts events throughout Northwest Indiana and beyond. Art on the Air is heard Sunday at 7 p.m. on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, also streaming live at lakeshorepublicmedia.org, and is available on Lakeshore Public Media's website as a podcast. Art on the Air is also heard Friday at 11 a.m. and Monday at 5 p.m. on WVLP 103.1 FM, streaming live at wvlp.org. If you have a smart speaker like Amazon Alexa, Google Assistant, or Apple Siri, just tell it to play Art on the Air to hear the latest episode. Our Spotlight interviews are heard every Wednesday on Lakeshore Public Media. Thanks to Tom Maloney, Vice President of Radio Operation for Lakeshore Public Media, and Greg Kovach, WVLP's Station Manager. Our theme music is by Billy Foster with a vocal by Renee Foster. Art on the Air is supported by an Indiana Arts Commission Arts Project grant, South Shore Arts, and the National Endowment for the Arts. We'd like to thank our current underwriters for Lakeshore Public Media, Macaulay Real Estate in Valparaiso, Olga Patrician, Senior Broker. And for WVLP, Walt Reidinger of Paragon Investments. So we may continue to bring you Art in the Air. We rely on you, our listeners and underwriters, for ongoing financial support. If you're looking to support Art on the Air, we have information on our website at breck.com/AOTA, where you can find out how to become a supporter or underwriter of our program in whatever amount you are able. And like I say every week, don't give till it hurts. Give till it feels good. You'll feel so good about supporting Art on the Air. If you're interested in being a guest or send us information about your arts-related event or exhibit, please email us at aota@breck.com. That's aota@breck.com, or contact us through our Facebook page. Your hosts were Larry Breckner and Esther Golden, and we invite you back next week for another episode of Art on the Air.
Aloha, everyone. Have a splendid week.
Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. You're in the know with Esther and Larry. Art on the Air today. Stay in the know with Larry and Esther. Art on the Air our way. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the